Hello, it is great to be back with you. I am Alex Aronson, Executive Director of Court Accountability here on Midas Touch Legal AF. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We are going to dive into some very important judicial crisis news. If you have been following this channel for any amount of time, you should be well aware that there is a massive crisis in the federal judiciary, which has become ground zero for escalating constitutional collapse being provoked by Donald Trump, but one that has really been set on fire and had the groundwork laid for it by the court itself, by John Roberts and his right-wing majority on the court that have spent years working not only to expand their own power over every question of law and policy in our country, but to aggrandize executive power and to create this mad, tyrannical autocrat that is now really trying to break things. There's another judicial crisis actually taking place in the meantime. While a lot of our attention here on the channel is paid to the big politically salient cases, often the ones that reach the Supreme Court, there's a lot of other litigation and cases making their way through the lower courts that don't have those big picture political stakes. That are not getting resolved because there is a crisis of judicial administration, a massive shortage of judges on the federal bench, way too few judges to resolve the number of cases that are being brought in federal courts. And this is not a new challenge. This has been a problem that has been festering and growing for some time now, and we haven't been able to resolve it because of the heightened politicization of the judicial nominations process. We'll get into this. I'm so excited to bring in an amazing guest and champion and advocate for judicial fairness and integrity and accountability, Maggie Jo Buchanan, Interim Executive Director at the stalwart Demand Justice, which launched in 2018 and was such an amazingly important force for accountability, putting real pressure on Democrats. I was working in the Senate Judiciary Committee at the time and was so relieved and inspired by the aggressive advocacy we saw coming in from Demand Justice, including pushing Democrats really hard on these important issues. Maggie Jo, it's great to have you with us. I wanted to dive into the dynamics surrounding this judicial administration crisis and how it's unfolding here, particularly in light of the massive attacks we're seeing from MAGA Republicans and Trump against the courts. The sort of groundwork here is that there's a bill, the Judges Act, which would add judges to the federal bench to help resolve this crisis. We tried to pass a bill like this during the Biden administration. The Republicans delayed. They didn't want Biden to have any opportunity to nominate additional judges. And as soon as Donald Trump won the election, they moved to try to pass it. Biden had to veto it. And now there's an effort afoot, particularly in the House, but gonna follow on in the Senate to try to get these judges added. That's a big problem from my perspective. How are you guys looking at this? And can you fill us in on sort of the political dynamics surrounding this important legislation?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to be here. Before getting into the particulars of the bill, I think it's important to take a step back and look at, as you've said, this crisis that's unfolding. What we're seeing is a coordinated campaign from the MAGA movement to assert more and more power over the judiciary, from directly attacking judges to legislation like the Judges Act, as well as others that we're going to talk about, and as well as now putting forward nominees that demonstrate not only really a willingness to embrace extreme policies, but also contribute to these attacks on the judiciary's ability to check executive overreach. So, they're not making a secret about what you're doing, what they're trying to do here. And when Trump is openly attacking the courts, saying that he could follow the orders to bring, to bring the man, the father from Maryland back after he was unlawfully deported, but just won't. Any attempts here from the Judges Act or any other type of legislation needs to be looked at through that lens. Because, Demand Justice has long supported reforms to the judiciary to create a truly fair and independent court system. But what we're seeing right now is efforts being done in poor faith to empower the presidency, namely Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, he very clearly sees judges and lawyers like the ones he's appointed at the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, Ed Martin, whose nomination to be U.S. Attorney for District of Columbia failed. He views these legal office holders, judges and lawyers alike, as arms of his autocratic agenda. He does not want judges who are fair and impartial and going to resolve questions of law neutrally. He wants judges who will rubber stamp his agenda, people like Matthew Kacsmaryk, whom he nominated in the first administration, Aileen Cannon in Florida, Trump loyalists.
Yep.
And we've seen already in this first wave of judicial nominations that's come out of this administration, another set of extreme movement zealots connected to Leonard Leo's dark money network, who we can expect, if confirmed, to be rubber stamps for this administration's agenda. And in that broader context, it just seems completely insane to me that any Democrats would consider supporting legislation like this. I was grateful to see House Democrats, led by Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of House Judiciary, uniformly opposing this legislation back in March when the House Republicans tried to advance it and successfully advanced it through the House Judiciary Committee. He said something along the lines of like, well, why would we ever be party to continuing this court packing scheme? At the same time, we're hearing whispers that there might indeed be some Democratic support for passing the Judges Act in the Senate, at least. Chris Coons, the senator from Delaware, has been the co-sponsor of this legislation. I had some real frustration with how he navigated and negotiated the Judges Act package at the beginning of the Biden administration, not insistent enough on in ensuring that Biden would have an opportunity to select judges and deferring the judgeships too long to allow a president like Trump to fill those vacancies. But in this context, in the constitutional moment we are living through now, it seems beyond the pale that they would consider it. How do you see those dynamics playing out at the Senate, and what can folks do to make their voices heard in opposition to this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's extremely frustrating because we're just, to your point, this is not normal times. When you see these attacks by the president himself on the judiciary, the idea that you would hand him more judges, which means more power over the judiciary, when, as we have seen, he prioritizes loyalty in not only those who work for him, but those he appoints. It's beyond the pale. And I think that was really important. We at Demand Justice, we organized a letter that we were really heartened to see was joined by representatives, certainly from the good government movement, but from reproductive rights, the unions, environmental advocates, that said that giving Trump these judges is just unacceptable, because this isn't a niche issue. This is going to be something that impacts people's rights. And in this, extremely vulnerable moment, it's just, you need to stand up and say no. And, that's why I think the Democrats in committee were wonderful, as you said, but we need people to be speaking out. I think it's been so heartening seeing how many people have participated in, have gone to town halls, who have participated in marches. And unfortunately, it's just going to have to be more and more and more for everyone to speak out, to contact elected representatives, who may think, well, to your point, Alex, that, we do need some more judges. And that may be true, but we don't need more Trump judges. And what we need to have sent is a clear message that, to every elected official, but certainly to Democrats, that this is not time to put your head in the sand and pretend we're in some normal sense. We got to stand up. And this is something that, again, it's not a niche issue. It's an issue for anyone who cares about their kids being safe, their reproductive rights, and just basic ability to live a good life. This is just not acceptable. And, I think we're awaiting a floor vote. We're not exactly sure when that'll happen in the House, but when this does move over to the Senate Judiciary Committee should hear this loud and clear from their constituents, that this is unacceptable. And there is, I suppose the desire to compromise is human, but this is not the time. This is the time for strength and standing up for what's right.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting your finger on this dynamic that I think is festering within the Democratic Party. It's an indecision around how to confront autocracy, how to even talk about it, how to name it. An impulse, I think, deeply embedded in particularly old guard Democrats, more centrist establishment Democrats, to pick back up the broken pieces of our constitutional framework and the norms that we used to mutually abide by, to try to make things better again. And a new, I think, much more realistic, temperamental approach to forcefully confront autocracy and authoritarianism, which is what I think the moment very clearly calls for. And, you can see it play out in this context where, even in my intro to this video here, I've acknowledged we've got a real crisis of judicial administration. There are real world consequences to people not being able to have their claims heard. But at the same time, given how much power the courts have aggrandized to themselves, how broadly their decisions affect the lives of Americans across the board, not just the litigants who have cases before them. And we're seeing the importance of that day by day as lower court judges step in to stop Trump's unconstitutional, unlawful executive actions. It just cannot be a time for a restoration of bipartisanship or kind of a good government mindset when it would just facilitate the, capture and weaponization of the judicial branch even worse than it is now.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I don't think anyone wants to be, maybe those on the far right, but no one wants to be in this situation, right? Like nobody wants to be having to grapple with these dynamics, but we know the only way we're going to get to a better place, to a position where we could have maybe good faith debate, is if we fight for the values of this country, if we fight and push back. So it's just, if there's not a lot of, I think, clear answers, good answers, except for the fact that the guiding principle has to be not to hand the judiciary even further over to one political party that, also happens to be asserting itself as an authoritarian force every single day. Like that is just, unfortunately, reality, and our elected officials have to confront that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Maggie Jo, for your leadership in bringing these issues to broad public attention. I was the letter you guys led and all those groups, right? These issue groups. It reflects, as you say, the broad-based consequences of these politics around the courts. The importance of connecting the dots here between these structural constitutional issues and the issues that we actually think about day to day in our lives that we know affect us so deeply. Can you tell us a little bit more if folks want to learn more about Demand Justice, get involved in your work? You guys drive really powerful campaigns. You're holding big law firms accountable for capitulating to Trump. You have an amazing tracker of judicial nominations, and you're going to be a leading advocacy voice to hold the line on courts throughout this administration, as you have been for years, behind us. Tell folks how to get involved with your really important work.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having us and those kind words. Please go to demandjustice.org, where you'll see a lot of information about all of our priorities from what we're going to do to make sure to fight back against extremist nominees, to our campaigns to hold big law firms that have bent the knee to Trump accountable, and get involved with all of our different calls to action and efforts we have. So please visit us there at demandjustice.org. And again, Alex, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, would love to have you back. This is perfect for this audience here. They're always looking for ways to engage, to take the knowledge that we are developing mutually together here in this community and actualize it, operationalize it. And, you guys have built such an amazing vessel platform for delivering that type of popular action. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us here on Midas Touch Legal AF. Hit that like and subscribe button. Check out our work at courtaccountability.org and Tilted Scales on Substack. Until next time, stay mad, stay motivated, stay mighty. Signing off.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.